Fading in from black. Hi everybody and welcome to the DieAntDie 3 All-Stars compilation. This is just going to be one big video where I combine my uploads from March where I talked about Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. As I mentioned in the Mario 64 video, this is not like a big retrospective or review or deep dive. I am not smart enough to do something like that. Instead, I just wanted to talk about my opinion of these three games since I grew up with all of them and they all mean a lot to me on a personal level. And because I'm not some sort of cheap, lazy, greedy company that would just release three old things without an ounce of effort, I thought that I would film a new intro and outro for this compilation, you know, bare minimum stuff. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Over 20 years ago, the world was blessed with a monumental video game starring a cartoon mascot beloved by all. Created by one of the most revered development studios in the industry, this is a game that fans of all ages can still enjoy and a game that holds up even today. But enough dragging this on, you all know what game I'm talking about. I'm talking about Rare's Mickey Speedway USA! Released on November 13th, 2000 in the US, Mickey Speedway USA is a kart racing game starring Goofy and friends and... What? Super Mario what? Alright, fine, I'll talk about the f***ing scary piano game that doesn't even have go-karts in it. Whatever. People only want to talk about Super Mario 64.
No!
No one ever wants
God!
to talk about Mickey
Damn
Speedway
it!
USA. So Mickey Speedway
God!
USA doesn't even
Damn
matter. Super Mario 64 is a game that needs no introduction. No, I'm serious, this game really needs no introduction. It's been discussed and dissected by people much smarter and more articulate than myself dozens of times here on YouTube.com. We all know it's a game that revolutionized what games can be, a pure distillation of fun and joy and everything that makes Nintendo so great in terms of their creative output and absolutely nothing else. A 3D platformer that all future 3D platformers would be judged off of. Even my beloved SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom isn't safe. That game rocks, but Patrick can't even long jump, so it's worthless. Basically, Super Mario 64 is Super Mario 64. But it's the last month that we're legally allowed to celebrate Mario's 35th anniversary, so I wanted to mark the occasion by sharing my past and present thoughts on all three games featured in the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection for the Switch. These aren't going to be massive reviews or retrospectives or anything, just some of my opinions and individual experiences with each of the three. I'm not IGN or whatever, okay? I'm just some dipshit. You don't have to agree with anything I ever say, I promise. And because these games are all very personal to me, please allow me to start this talk off by sharing a bit about myself? Sorry. Let's travel back in time. Super Mario 64 and I were both born in 1996, meaning we are forever bonded by blood. The game was released on the Nintendo 64, the first video game console I ever had. See, my dad's friend handed us down his old one around the time the GameCube was releasing, and with it, a copy of the very first game I ever played, Madden 99. I did not understand how to do Madden 99 as a kindergartner, and even though I never saw any other controller at that point, the N64 still managed to terrify me. So my first impression of video games was that they were weird and confusing, and seriously, why did the controller look like that? Thankfully, a little while later, my dad grabbed us a copy of Mario 64 at a swap meet, and thus, I was able to start playing a game that actually made some sense to me. I ended up rocking out with this game for hours and hours at a time, even though I absolutely sucked at it for the most part. I just kinda liked running around, and controlling Mario became second nature after a while. Being bonded by blood does that to you. I liked blasting out a cannon straight to my death for no reason. I enjoyed punching and kicking the bystanders. I was delighted when I discovered shell surfing. I had tons of fun doing everything except completing the actual game. As I said, I sucked at it. I especially remember my sister having to help me beat Bowser each time because I couldn't time the fucking spinning right, okay? Leave me alone. I also died a lot. Tall mountain. Anyway, real life wasn't always fun for me growing up for a variety of reasons, but when I played Super Mario 64, none of those problems mattered. It was a happy place game for me for sure, a game I could just sink into and enjoy the simple act of existing in, and it was largely thanks to its absolute focus on player freedom. Looking at it now, all of our massive newfangled open world video games have definitely normalized that feeling of freedom in bigger and more elaborate contexts since then, but I'd say that Super Mario 64 nailed it pretty much perfectly over 20 years ago, entirely thanks to its controls. Mario can side flip, long jump, crawl around like a big baby, awkwardly bounce off of walls, and so much more. Like, you can definitely walk all the way up a bomb battlefield if you want, or you can just kind of do this and then a little shimmy and boom, save a few extra steps right at the top. And the game is full of these little moments where you're just allowed to flex your own skills, and it leads to an experience where you're encouraged to have your own fun while you're completing each task. That's what kept me coming back to the game time and time again as a kid. Super Mario 64 just made me feel happy during my formative years, but I'll admit that I didn't continue playing it religiously as I got older. It's been quite a few years since I've gone back to it, so to be able to play the original game portably for the first time was an absolutely incredible experience. And when I say portably, I'm not talking about 3D All-Stars, by the way. No, I'm talking about the 3DS version, bitch! Let me explain. When I say 3DS version, I'm not talking about Super Mario 64 DS. I am never talking about Super Mario 64 DS. That re-release, which features new stars and characters and minigames and whatnot, always bothered me a bit growing up. Unlike a lot of other people, I didn't hate the movement being mapped to either the D-pad or the touchscreen. The D-pad and run button combo work fine enough, and of course it's even better on the 3DS's circle pad, but neither are as natural as the stiff as a rock N64 controller stick. No, what I really didn't appreciate was how Mario's moveset was divided up between several characters, two of which, Yoshi and Wario, I did not enjoy controlling at all. And I was especially turned off by how washed out the visuals looked. Don't get me wrong, the character models and assets and stuff look noticeably better on the DS, and it's not an ugly game, but I am a stupid purist at heart, so it was just not my preferred graphical style, especially in terms of some of the color choices. So I'm not saying it's objectively worse at all. In fact, it's probably the definitive version of the game in many ways, but it's just not my cup of tea personally. So no, again, I'm not talking about 64DS. I'm talking about the bona fide finger-licking Super Mario 64 3DS fan port. Quick context, pretty much throughout all of 2020, there were pretty heavy rumors that a 3D Mario collection was coming to the Switch. I almost immediately rejected those rumors because I couldn't imagine Nintendo selling a re-release of Mario Galaxy for anything less than full price, but all the hubbub at the time gave me quite a hankering to play the old games again, especially 64. Then one day I was perusing through Reddit and I found out that some capable individuals managed to get the original Super Mario 64 running on the 3DS via emulation. I'm not normally one to bother emulating games out of pure laziness more than anything, but I just wanted to play it so badly after the months of rumors, so I did. Please don't tell Nintendo on me! I played only a bit of the game on 3DS, which was a bizarre experience, taught myself how to backwards long jump after all these years, beat the final boss, and had a hell of a couple of days with it. Sure, there were some frame rate hiccups, and I was beginning to recognize quite a few flaws that I hadn't really noticed before, but I figured, hey, this is just a classic game I know and love on a smaller screen. I was just happy to finally scratch that itch I'd been building up. Fast forward a couple of months, and Nintendo finally announced the 3D All-Stars collection that I truly thought would never happen. Sure, there wouldn't be many quality of life upgrades, and sure, Mario 64 was only 720p in dock mode, and sure, they didn't even bother to go in and improve any of the game's cameras, and sure, it turns out that they were literally just emulating the games themselves, but I was excited nonetheless. And then I booted up 64, and after only a very little bit, I jumped right over to Sunshine. Which finally brings us to today, Super Mario 64 in 2021 on a shiny modern platform. I hope I've made it abundantly clear how much I love this game. It means so much to me on an emotional and nostalgic level. It defined my early childhood in many ways and introduced me to my love of video games as a whole. But playing through it again as part of a full-price collection just opened my eyes to how this old dog of a game is honestly getting pretty tired now. The more I play Super Mario 64 today, the more I just can't ignore its shortcomings anymore. The absolute biggest disappointment for me is when I realize that movement simply isn't as precise as I remember it being. There's a lot of slipperiness, and any type of tight platforming makes everything grind to a complete halt. Wall jumps do not work like 80% of the time, same with side flips. Trying to rotate Mario ever so slightly is much more of a death wish than it has any right to be, and overall controlling this guy just feels clunky more than anything else. It works, don't get me wrong, it definitely works, but not as well as I wish it did. But then we move on to the levels. The levels, as large as they can be and as memorable as they are, often force you through the same tedious activities again and again and don't push their ideas to their fullest potential. Just one example, the Haunted Mansion level has you fighting Big Boo for 3 out of the 6 standard star missions. Sure, each of the 3 fights are the culmination of a different situation. The first one has you murdering a bunch of Boos first, then the second one has you murdering a bunch of Boos first, but this time on a carousel with a cool creepy song playing, and the third one has you doing a bit of platforming up to the mansion's roof, which adds to the challenge by having you fight high above the ground. Other levels, such as Tall Tall Mountain and Tick-Tock Clock, expect you to trudge up the same vertical climb again and again and again. Music repeats itself far too much, coins aren't visible when they're more than like 2 feet away, and oh my f***ing god, the camera! Look, I totally recognize that these aren't new or unique complaints, and I am aware of the fact that this is an old game that pretty much created its whole genre, so of course it's gonna have some problems, stupid Anthony, but I never realized how persistent these issues really are in the game. Super Mario 64 features 15 levels in addition to Peach's Castle, which serves as the game's central hub. Actually, let me focus on that for a second, because one aspect of this game that has aged quite gracefully is the incredible hub area. Peach's Castle is just about perfect at what it's setting out to be. It's large without feeling aimless, full of all sorts of fun little secrets secrets to find, it expands very gradually and consistently, and overall it just feels really good running all around this beautiful little McMansion. It's never a chore getting from one level to another, and it has a real sense of place, almost as if it could exist in the real world. It might still be the best 3D platformer hub world of all time. I will say that I personally prefer Mario Sunshine's Isle Delfino a bit more, but even I can't act like that one is quite as effective and flawless as the castle is. Getting back to the topic of levels, let's glance at them one by one. Bob-omb Battlefield, excellent starting area, various tasks to complete, nice and wide and forgiving to get you comfortable with moving around, but I wish that 1 star wasn't locked off by needing the wing cap. Whomp's Fortress, not as good. This level features 2 incredibly stupid stars in the form of the dumb breakaway wall and the incredibly strong owl, but this is just such an iconic level, so I can't be too mad at it. Jolly Roger Bay, no thank you. Cool Mountain, probably my favorite level in the entire game. Lots of unique activities, and it's fun to murder the baby penguins. So things start strong, but then get gradually worse from there. Big Boo's Haunt, like I just said, you fight the same giant boo 3 times, but this one isn't bad, and I appreciate the atmosphere and real sense of dread. Hazy Maze Cave, this level is not my favorite. I find the aesthetic to be boring, and the level kind of feels too big. I get that they're going for the whole sprawling maze thing. I mean, the level is large enough that they threw in its own map. A map that provides no real help at all, but that just makes for an area that's kinda fun at first, but becomes a slog to get through by the end. Lethal Lava Land, I enjoy the concept of this one, but the volcano sections, and the red coins are just kinda sitting there. Shifting Sandland, I am not too big into desert levels in Mario games, and this is definitely not a worthwhile one. I find the objectives to be pretty tedious overall, and I hate the sand that one-shot kills you if you so much as sneeze by it. Getting inside the pyramid is neat, but it features one of the absolute worst stars in the entire game in the form of the secret coins that are so cryptically hidden that it becomes incredibly irritating to find them all, and there's only 5 of them! Dire Docks, no thank you! Sorry, to be fair, the docks in Jolly Roger Bay aren't actually bad, but they're levels that heavily feature swimming, which is a mechanic that I simply do not care for in this game. Snowman's Land, why? Cool Mountain does everything so much better. This level is fine, but even though I get that it was probably designed to make the most of the game's assets, it feels very throwaway, and I always forget that it even exists. Wet Dry World! Wet Dry World is so cool and features the incredibly neat water level mechanic. I wish the rest of the game did more stuff like this overall. Once again, Tall Mountain. Okay, actually, I kinda like Tall Mountain now, but it's really tedious how many times you have to climb up to the top. The name of the level has the word tall in it twice. Nintendo knew what they were doing when they made us deal with this bullshit. Tiny Huge Island is a really cool idea that ends up feeling lazy more than anything else. When you're small, the areas feel too big and empty, and when you're big, you can just kinda stomp around and it feels trivial. But again, this is definitely a cool idea and features some fun stars. I just think the execution is lacking. Tick-Tock Clock, love the whole clock stopping thing, and this one is so iconic, but this is a vertical level with an emphasis on tight platforming, and when you fall, you almost always immediately die, so no! And last, and certainly close to least, is Rainbow Ride. Rainbow Ride is an irredeemable disease of a level. It is one of the most boring, slow, and obnoxious parts of the whole game. So in retrospect, we got 15 levels with just about all of the good ones being bogged down by repetitive tasks and an unfortunate lack of variety, and quite a few stinker levels to boot. Look, I get it, the Nintendo 64 was basically a toaster with RAM, and not even one of those fancy 4-slice toasters, but that's my whole point. While this game is definitely a product of its time, looking at it from the lens of today, and especially when Nintendo feels comfortable reselling it as is as part of a larger collection, it just feels pretty bad. I will say, where Super Mario 64 still excels today is in that sense of freedom that I talked about earlier. I love how you only need 70 stars in order to beat the game, and I enjoy the fact that I can clear out just about every level in one large swoop, or I can totally just hop around between them if I feel like it. I appreciate having the option to not even touch f***ing Rainbow Ride, thank God. And while the controls are definitely lacking, they really do provide that same feeling of being able to just dick around and find weird ways to travel. Something that truly feels unique to this game, only being surpassed by later 3D Marios for me. But I really do believe that if Mario 64 is gonna survive the test of time, and Nintendo wants to feature it in any way other than cheap virtual console re-releases, it's really gonna need some more fine-tuning than just making the game's UI look a little better. Look, I know I said I'm a stupid purist, and I know I complained about 64DS, but I respect that game, damn it. It tried new things, it improved on quite a few aspects of the original, it took risks, it included Wario! With 64DS, Nintendo needed to prove that their newest handheld was powerful, so they shoved a home console game on it and added in new content. And that's really cool. It might not be my favorite way to play 64, but I'm glad it exists. But with the 3D All-Stars collection, this quote-unquote celebration of Mario's 3D history, except for 64DS and Galaxy 2 and 3D Land, which all never happened, what are you talking about? They absolutely half-assed it in every way. To reiterate, Super Mario 64 is one of the best and most important games of all time that inspired just about all future 3D platformers, but that doesn't change my belief that it's just so dated by today's standards, so flawed in a lot of small but fundamental ways. And it doesn't need to be, so allow me to introduce a new segment I'd like to call Here are some things Nintendo could have done to polish up Super Mario 64 for the 3D All-Stars collection without having to completely rework the game or anything too major like that. Let me start with something I haven't really word vomited about yet, the camera! I know that Mario 64's camera is monumental and set the blueprint for just about all open world cameras moving forward, but it's gotta be spruced up. Even if they can't make it as functional as Mario Odyssey's or anything, just fix up the way it controls, make the preset camera angles more usable. I don't know how, but just make it work better. Next, the levels. Look, at the end of the day, it wouldn't be possible to fix a lot of the problems with these levels and the stars within them without having to rebuild things from scratch, but simple changes could go a long way to improving the overall experience. Add some cracking textures to that breakable wall in Womp's Fortress, move around the secret coins in the pyramid, add a fucking platform to the bottom of TikTok clock like 64DS did. These are all small tweaks that would make the game that much better without radically changing it, and hell, let these new changes be optional so stupid purists like me still have the opportunity to play the original game warts and all if we want to. Tighten up Mario's controls, especially his wall jump and the way he turns ever so slightly based on improvements made in Sunshine and Odyssey especially, and again, make these changes optional. Options are good, options make everybody happy. Options! Add backwards long jumping back in, please. Seriously, I finally just learned how to do it. Please give it back to me so I can feel like a big strong boy again. Make Bowser look a little bit less like a hideous monstrosity. This one is self-explanatory. Get rid of blocky low poly Mario and improve the draw distance for items like coins. Seriously, the 100 coin stars are some of the best parts of the entire game, but collecting them is a lot harder when you can't see a coin if it's more than a solid 2 feet away from you. Last and most importantly, let us control the cannons with gyro aiming. Not because aiming is super difficult or anything, but just because it'd be really neat. Despite my critical tone, I want to remind you all that I started off this video by gushing about Super Mario 64. I do truly love this game, but as time has gone on and my nostalgia wears thinner and thinner and Nintendo feels compelled to re-release this old game without even so much as shining up poor Mario's shoes, I do feel my adoration slowly fading away. Super Mario 64 is a masterpiece of its time. By today's standards, it's a decently solid 3D platformer with more than a few problems, but that's all it really is anymore, and in my opinion, that's incredibly unfortunate. I will always love Super Mario 64 because I grew up with it, and because it's fun, and because it makes me happy, but none of these things are objective fact, and none of these things can band-aid up the bigger problems that it has. And to be totally fair, none of my critiques are objective fact either. I mean, tons of people still fully love this game despite any issues that I may have with it, and it's still hot in the speedrunning community, which is all really great. I want people to play and enjoy this game forever. But with the release of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, Nintendo continues their trend of generally treating their massive monumental back catalog with contempt at worst and indifference at best, not counting the 3D Zelda remakes for the most part. And unfortunately, Super Mario 64 suffers the most for it, and it manages to feel like a timeless game that's still falling victim to time. Does that make any real sense? No, not really, but that's the best way I can describe it. Yada yada yada. Point is, I love the game, flaws and all, but that doesn't erase its many flaws. And speaking of games that I love that are riddled with flaws, next time on the DieAntDie Super Show, we will take a look at Super Mario Sunshine, my favorite Mario game of all time. That's right, I'm one of those degenerate freaks, and I do not care. Ha ha! Bye-bye! Hey DieAntDiers, today I'm gonna heap praise on a very polarizing video game, a game that is either the pinnacle of Nintendo content or a plague unleashed upon our houses, depending on who you ask. I'll be talking very subjectively and only based on my own opinion, so please don't get mad at me when I say that Super Mario Sunshine is probably my favorite video game of all time, and in my own individual opinion that nobody has to agree with, the most purely fun mainline Mario experience that would only be maybe surpassed by the release of Super Mario Odyssey 15 years later. I'm gonna get into all sorts of reasons why I'm bad and wrong for feeling this way, and I'm also going to criticize the game quite a bit regardless of my own love for it, but I have a lot of thoughts about this game, too many thoughts in fact, my brain hurts, so to help me organize things a bit, I'm going to break this video up into chapters, alright? Let's do this! Chapter 1, Humble Beginnings. Super Mario Sunshine released on August 26, 2002 here in North America, which doesn't sound right. Did games as big as Mario used to come out in August? Anyway, Sunshine was the first mainline Mario game released after Super Mario 64, a game that pretty much defined the entire 3D platforming genre. That game was massively important, of course, nobody can argue otherwise, but it had its flaws. Flaws I already cried more than enough about 2 weeks ago. Point is, with Sunshine, all Nintendo really had to do was build upon what they already created and improve on issues such as inconsistent level design and an already antiquated camera camera system. But Nintendo, those scamps, that obviously wasn't enough for them. Before they landed on the concept of Sunshine, they toyed with all sorts of ideas, including a direct sequel to Mario 64, as well as the notorious Super Mario 128, an idea that still makes no sense to me even after watching a bunch of videos about it. Seriously, how is this positioned as a sequel to a 3D platformer, or was it just a tech demo that everybody thought was 64's sequel? I don't know, it's too warm today. Whatever it really was, ideas for that prototype made their way to other great games such as Pikmin and Super Mario Galaxy, leaving us with a relatively traditional sequel instead. I'm not sure if it's fair to call Super Mario Sunshine traditional. It is easily one of the weirdest and most thematically distinct Mario games even to this day, but compared to this, yeah, traditional. Anyway, it's no secret that Mario Sunshine was a rushed game. According to producer Shigeru Miyamoto, after developing the new engine running the game, Sunshine itself was made in about a year and a half, and most of us have accepted the logic that it was rushed out in order to help breathe life into the GameCube's increasingly disappointing sales. Kind of reminds me of a quote from Miyamoto himself about how delayed games are eventually good, but rushed games are forever something something, I don't know. Anyway, Sunshine released to positive reception from critics and fans alike, and its reputation has bounced all over the place in the years since. But time for me to make this all about myself. I didn't get my GameCube until 2004 or so, a few years after it launched. I was happily rocking out with my Nintendo 64 up until that point, but my very first GameCube games were Luigi's Mansion and The Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition, which, as an aside, was absolutely not a collector's edition in any way. As time went on, I would add games like Smash Melee and the original Animal Crossing to my arsenal, but I was originally a bit uninterested in Sunshine despite my love for Mario 64 at the time. It wasn't because I was growing out of 3D platformers or anything. I recall genuinely enjoying Donkey Kong 64, so my video game standards were still pretty low back then. It also wasn't because I thought it didn't look fun or anything. No, I was uninterested in Sunshine because I was a moron who thought that the game was trying to teach me about environmentalism, and as a child, I thought that was bad. Look, I was like 8 years old at the time. I was watching South Park behind my parents' back. I recently learned that I could whisper swear words if no adults were around. I was too cool for a game about cleaning up graffiti, and that's all I thought the game was. A cleaning simulator with a pro-society moral behind it. That logic led me to dismissing a very good game for quite a bit of time. Let me repeat myself. I was a moron! I don't remember when I ended up picking it up, but of course I eventually did, and my god, I fell in love with this game the second I popped in the disc. Wowee, Mario's on vacation, and the enemies look all different and unique. The locales look like real actual worlds, and you can even see how all the levels are connected in the distance. You can spray these funny dick people with water and they go nuts. And the controls, oh my god, the controls are so good, so fluid and responsive, and Mario can do all sorts of new tricks. And Flood, a water jetpack stapled onto a game that already has so many fun control options. Are you kidding me? It's so much fun, too much fun. And then Prepubescent Anthony had a heart attack. I love the hell out of every single aspect of this game. I failed to dump a Pachinko machine 100 times in a row. I ordered Yoshi to vomit all over everybody. I sped around Delfino Plaza with the turbo nozzle. I experimented with finding the fastest way to beat the bosses. I had tons of fun doing everything except completing the actual fucking game. I couldn't beat Mario 64 either, but to be fair, I was like 5 at the time and I didn't play it quite as consistently. With Sunshine, I had no excuse. I logged more hours into it, got more comfortable with the controls, and I was older too, but despite all of that, I never managed to get to the boat section of Corona Mountain before losing all my lives and giving up. It's not my fault fire is scary! The point is, I loved the game growing up, obviously. Also, a silly anecdote, but I always thought it was neat how it was Luigi's Mansion's exact opposite in most ways. I know Mario's in that game, but I like to imagine that he was secretly chilling on vacation while Luigi only thought he was trapped. It made me laugh imagining Luigi wasting his time while Mario was bouncing around on tight ropes and riding roller coasters. But while I love Mario Sunshine, I've always known that it's quite a flawed game. We'll talk more in depth about some of those flaws later, but regardless, even as I got older and kinda stopped playing video games for a while, Sunshine was one that I could still boot up from time to time anyway. It's one of the few GameCube games I didn't sell as a dumb, stupid kid, thank god, a game that I would occasionally pop in even as my Wii began gathering dust throughout high school and beyond. But much like 64, it's been quite a few years since I last played it, so when Nintendo finally announced the 3D All-Stars collection and Sunshine showed up on screen, I'll admit, I actually got a bit emotional. Part of the reason why is because Nintendo doesn't really acknowledge this game anymore. It almost seems like they're ashamed of it. Sure, Piantas make their way around Mario Kart from time to time, same with Petey Piranha and the Cataquacks, but besides those, a lot of the things that made this game unique are just relegated to Mario history. One exception is Bowser Jr., who made his first appearance here, but he doesn't really represent this game much since he's become more of an extension of the Koopalings. But Toadstool, the various spins on normal Mushroom Kingdom baddies, and even Flood just don't really show up at all anymore. Except for Smash, Flood is at least represented in Smash! So to see Mario Sunshine show up today as part of a collection celebrating the character's 3D history felt like a bit of vindication in a way. In my eyes, this game deserves to be played on modern hardware, warts and all. Not only is it tons of fun, but it also represents the weird-ass GameCube era of Mario, you know, when he wasn't fully defined yet, so his games could take place in a seedy neighborhood full of mobsters or in a legitimately creepy mansion, and also he can get a tattoo. I grew up in that era and love it. It's obvious that Nintendo doesn't love it, but they're wrong and can f off, I don't care. And Sunshine is a small piece of that, which makes me all the happier that the game is relevant again after all these years. But none of what I just said really matters if the game is a moist sack of crap. Chapter 2. Okay, I'll talk about the actual game now. Super Mario Sunshine, as I said, is a 3D sandbox platformer in the vein of its predecessor. In this game, Italian foreigner Mario goes on vacation to the beautiful Isle Delfino and is promptly arrested and denied a fair trial for a crime he didn't commit.
Racist! They're racist!
Mario is forced against his will to clean up an island and collect shine sprites, which are apparently really valuable despite a significant number of these assholes hoarding them anyway. Thankfully, a talking water pump named Flood just happens to be there, which means that Mario isn't burdened with having to carry around a bunch of sponges. Yada yada yada, Peach thinks she's Bowser Jr.'s mom despite Anyway, the story kind of fizzles out from there. Hot take alert, but when it comes to Sunshine's narrative, I think it actually works quite well. They completely give up on it after unlocking Peanut Park, the voice acting is truly atrocious, and the cutscenes looked like ass back in 2002 and look even worse now, but it's a fun, stupid, fun, campy story that doesn't take itself too seriously. I don't see the harm. In my opinion, its only crime is that you can't skip the cutscenes, which they totally could have fixed in the 3D collection, but I guess they were too busy not fixing anything else to get to that. But regardless, I like the story, it's funny, and at least it tries to add context to Peach getting kidnapped, which is nice, but the fact that it's dropped halfway through renders it pretty unnecessary, and it doesn't feel like a traditional Mario story, so I can understand why some aren't too keen on it. But getting to gameplay, in a lot of ways, this just feels like Mario 64 on ecstasy. I'm just gonna say it, I think Mario controls perfectly in this game, at least after getting used to the swing of things. Sure, I missed the long jump, and sure, I really missed the backflip and crawling, but what we get instead is more than worth it in my eyes. Flood is incredible. I've heard some people say that he trivializes platforming by making movement too easy and forgiving, but while I guess I can kind of understand the sentiment, counter argument, that's kind of the whole point, you know? This isn't Mario 64's exact level design with a water jetpack, this is a game designed completely around Flood. And just like Mario's base movement, there's a learning curve to Flood that rewards skilled players for mastering his controls, but at the same time, using him is intuitive enough to allow for more inexperienced players to complete the game as well. He makes things easier than they would be without him, yeah, but he's an extension of your movement, a fun tool in his own right, and the game is better for it. In addition, having to worry about your water level makes it a bit harder to go spraying your liquids around willy-nilly, and there are more than enough obstacles and tight sections that require skillful use of the mechanic. I don't know, I've always disagreed with the Flood deniers, especially considering that despite the safety net that hovering might provide, this is still in many ways probably the hardest of all the 3D Marios, and that's without even bringing up the wonderful Floodless challenge levels that force players to make do without them. But yeah, in terms of controls as a whole, they really nailed it, but as I said, there's definitely a learning curve to this one. Mario's feeling pretty snappy here, but if you take the time to really get used to his weight and momentum, especially with moves like the spin jump and side flip, you're sure to have a great time. Moving on, Super Mario Sunshine features 7 main levels, which is 53.3% less levels than its predecessor. In addition, this game blesses us with the unbelievably cool Delfino Plaza hub world, and this hub rocks. I admit, it's not quite as magical as Peach's Castle, but I love how every single inch of this place is designed to tantalize you, to encourage you to keep playing. Like, wow, how can I get up to that giant shine sprite and clean it up? Or how do I get inside this building to grab the shine within? What's with all these doors that I can't open? And when can I unlock these 2 holographic flood boxes? I love this place, the music, the feeling that this is a real town square with lots of street vendors to harass. It's so great, and running all around is a perfect play area to just practice using Flood in your various moves. But back to the levels, let's break them down one by one. Bianco Hills! God, I love Bianco Hills. It's so big and pretty, and the chapters are all fun while serving as solid introductory challenges. Even fighting Petey Piranha twice doesn't bother me because each battle feels visually and mechanically distinct. Overall, really solid starting area, no real complaints from this guy. Rico Harbor! I enjoy the vibe of this place. It's so different from anything else in the Mario series, so non-abstract. It also includes some good solid platforming, but this level really didn't need 2 mostly similar Gooper Blooper fights, and the Red Coin Squid Surfing Challenge is one of the game's few mandatory bullshit levels purely for how broken it is. Gelato Beach! Surprise, surprise, I love Gelato Beach. It's fun and even introduces Cataquacks to the Mario series. Thank god! Though, this area does feature another mandatory bullshit level in the form of the Sandbird garbage, but other than that, this is a real winner, and the fight with the giant wiggler is a real highlight for me. Peanut Park! Peanut Park is great, with one major minor nitpick being that it's really dumb and annoying that after loading into the level, you have to walk through a second loading zone in order to get to the amusement park. Seriously, what's up with that? But in terms of things that actually matter, this one's a hoot, but I wish they did more with the amusement park concept. Like, maybe they could have removed the outer area of the park and focused more on platforming around rides and activities instead. That would have been neat. Serena Beach. I think Serena Beach might be the only area of the game that I don't really enjoy. I love the manta ray boss, and the hotel is a perfect island spin on the traditional Mario ghost house, but I have some bones to pick here. I am not a fan of having to run through the various rooms and vents of the hotel, which I think is tedious and frustrating. The hotel area features two mandatory bullshit levels, aka the casino section that can thankfully be glitch skipped really easily, and the King Boo fight, which is a fun concept but features too much RNG and wonky hit detection. Also, why does the hotel have a separate loading zone and then another one for the casino? Did Nintendo not hear my major minor nitpick about Peanut Park? Noki Bay! Shout out to Noki Bay for improving on Mario 64's vertical platforming. You do have to climb from the bottom of the level to the top more than once, sure, but each climb provides a new route which completely eliminates any feeling of repetition that could have existed otherwise. I also really love this area's self-contained story, though you solve the village's water pollution problem in chapter 4, which leaves the next 4 chapters feeling relatively aimless in comparison. I really wish this game didn't give up on all of its stories halfway through. That detail aside, excellent level all around. The third Gooper Blooper fight, are you kidding me? Tianta Village. I like a lot of things about this level, and it features a few tough platforming sections that I appreciate, but I could have lived without the 2 different chapters focused on dragging hot chain chomps to water baths. And of course, we have to talk about the final mandatory bullshit level in the game, the Chuckster chapter.
I love the Chuckster level.
It is stupid, stressful, unfair, and so much fun, though it really shouldn't have been required to reach the final level. Jesus Christ. Overall, I like it, but this really doesn't serve as the most satisfying final level for me, unfortunately. So that's it. There's a lot of fun to be had in these levels, but unfortunately, not a lot of levels to have fun in. I don't mind there being less levels than 64, but it's a downgrade for sure. But once you collect the first 7 shines in each level, you unlock the final boss area, Corona Mountain, and damn it. Okay, let me explain my biggest problem with this final section. Wait, sorry. Let me explain all my little problems with it first. I hate how the fire is a one-shot death sentence. I think it's difficult measuring how to land on these clouds. Clouds in a volcano is too goddamn stupid even for this stupid game. You don't actually get to fight Bowser. Instead, you have to fight the bathtub he's chilling in, which feels anticlimactic. Also, Bowser Jr. is the main villain of this game, so we should be directly fighting him and not Bowser anyway. Bowser's fucking voice. The fact that this final boss doesn't really test any of your abilities other than being able to use the rocket nozzle 5 times in a row. But the absolute worst atrocity out of the whole thing is the unbelievable boat section of my nightmares. First of all, sorry to be trivial, but how in the world can a wooden boat survive in lava, but a plumber with Mario's incredible upper body strength can't? But that's not my main issue. My main issue is the fact that you're just expected to control this awkward boat, a boat that has not been a mandatory part of the game beforehand, during the very final section, and a single mistake is enough to kill you. Are you kidding me? Sure, there is a small boat section in Noki Bay, but that's optional. They really couldn't have designed a single chapter around guiding boats before getting to the climax? Actually, there kind of are chapters focused on maneuvering like this, but in those levels, you're riding on lily pads with very different controls. The game introduces these in the very first level, and they even show up a few times after. Sure, the lily pads are terrible to control as well, but they're much more intuitive, and at least you get used to them by this late in the game. Is guiding a wilting lily pad through lava any more ridiculous than a wooden boat? Or better yet, maybe this section could have been replaced with some good old platforming like the ones in the floodless sections? Don't you think that would have been a more satisfying boss area, having Flood stolen in the final stretch and having to maneuver through some tight platforming across beds of lava to save him? But sure, wooden boat, that makes so much more sense. What am I thinking? This might very well be the worst, most disappointing and frustrating final section out of any mainline Mario game, and there is no joy in even getting through it. It's just, oh, the game's over, I did it, good for me! Which might as well lead into Chapter 3, all the fucking bullshit. There are a lot of problems with Super Mario Sunshine. Some, I think, are significant problems, such as the atrocious Corona Mountain, but some, I think, are completely overblown and not actually problems at all, and I want to talk about a couple of those first. For example, somebody on Twitter once said that every song in the game sounds exactly the same, and apparently that's a bad thing. This, in my opinion, illustrates an interesting phenomenon about Sunshine. See, some people love it so much that they'll praise it unconditionally, and some people hate it so much that they'll absolutely shit on it for no good reason in an effort to discredit everything about it. The quote-unquote issue of all the songs sounding the same is discussed in a wonderful article by Medium that I'll link to in the description, but point is, the game's soundtrack features a thematic motif that underlines the game's sense of interconnectedness. Sure, some of the melodies might sound similar, but each song has its own vibe, its own instrumentation. Do you want to know another game that successfully pulled this off? Super Mario World, that good game that everybody loves that also features levels plotted on a large world map. I personally think it works well in that game, and it works well here too, because it perfectly accomplishes what it's trying to do by creating musical bonds between levels. On a similar note, some people complain that the game's island theme becomes repetitive because apparently every level looks and feels the same. This to me is complete bubkiss though. This is definitely a much more subjective complaint than the music one, and I can at least understand it. Yeah, there's a consistent island theme, but are you telling me that Bianco Hills looks like Noki Bay or that Noki Bay looks like Pina Park? None of these locales feel like retreads of previous ones, with their major shared element just being water? A haunted touristy hotel doesn't feel the same as a trading port despite both being part of a tropical vacation site. If anything, I think the strong theming is one of the game's greatest strengths. It lends a solid identity to this video game world, and it fully deviates from the traditional Mario grass, desert, snow tropes because it has to. I mean, there is grass, but besides that, I appreciate Isle Delfino and the obvious attention they put into defining this place, into making each area feel distinct but part of a larger puzzle at the same time. But again, that one's subjective, I'll admit. I'm not the king of opinions or anything, unfortunately. But then we get into some of the game's real issues, problems that bog down the overall experience that can't be ignored by even the biggest and dumbest of fans. Like me! And while I was replaying the game for this video, I noticed something funny. So many of the most egregious issues in this game are entirely optional. That doesn't excuse any of these problems, by the way. It's just funny how I've never realized it before, but some of these issues that aren't mandatory include the broken pachinko machine, the f***ing lily pad level, and the 4-hour boat ride to get there, the dumb and repetitive fruit collecting minigames in the hub world, and of course, collecting the blue coins as a whole. Focusing on that one for a second, I think the blue coins could have been really good if they functioned like purple coins in Odyssey. You know, completely optional collectibles that provide completely optional content in the form of cute costumes for Mario or whatever. Instead, they're completely optional, yeah, but each one is worth 1/10 of a shine sprite, the game's main collectible, so for completionists and speedrunners, they're a mandatory excursion. They're absolutely not worth scavenging for, considering how many of them are hidden in ridiculous hiding spots or specific chapters of specific levels. They were clearly added in to pad out the game, but it's disappointing that they were so close to being fun little diversions to collect rather than one of the absolute worst elements of the final product. Anyway, back to the topic of optionality. The base game of Mario Sunshine is mostly good. Sure, a few repetitive shines here and there, and some absolutely garbage ones to boot. It's a 4 to 6 hour experience for me getting from beginning to end, and I have more than enough fun doing it. But the problem is that this base game is everybody's base game. In order to unlock Corona Mountain, you have to first collect the shine sprite on Delfino Airstrip, then collect the first 7 shines in each of the game's 7 levels. This isn't inherently a problem. I mean, just because it's not as open-ended as Mario 64's do-what-you-like structure doesn't mean it's bad, but the fact is that this game does rip away a lot of the freedom that game provided. Even worse, with only 50 out of the game's 120 shines being mandatory, that leaves a whopping 70 shines that are completely superfluous. Sure, in a way I'm glad that I don't have to worry about the pachinko machine and lily pad level in order to beat the game. I like that, in fact. I like not having to do stupid bullshit, but then why are they here? What's the point? And at the same time, why should I even bother scouring Delfino Plaza for shines that don't contribute to my progress whatsoever? The answer, of course, is that many of these bonus tasks are fun, especially the ones tucked away in the plaza, as well as quite a few of the extra shines in each level. But then we reach a conundrum that plagues this game in more ways than one. Chapter 4, how important is fun? This is the question that's always on my mind when playing Mario Sunshine. I have so much fun with this game on every level, literally not only on every level of the game, but in the little ways too. Running around is just fun, so is collecting a lot of the bonus shines and even some of the blue coins. The fact that this is a water-focused island, but the levels feature very little actual swimming. The silly minigame stuff like popping the balloons on the roller coaster, even riding around with Yoshi. Even if it's completely unnecessary, honestly, they really managed to botch the Yoshi in this game. But Sunshine has this real sense of joy and happiness and yeah, fun. Even the way Mario kinda woohoos his way all around. I mean, this game starts off with our guy finally going on vacation, his muscles sore as shit after having to lift up Bowser so many times in 64, and even as he's out here being framed for crimes, he's still so happy, smiling and shouting and bouncing around like there's no tomorrow. It's great! It's a wonderful game with an optimistic vibe that I really do love. But then the game has all these problems, and they're such big problems. Like, why on earth did they think forcing us to play each level in sequential order was a good idea? Sure, I get that some of the levels tell self-contained little stories, with highlights being both beach levels and Noki Bay. I also understand that the levels change a lot in between each chapter, which means that shines can't just be laying around like they were in 64. But was it really necessary to create such rigid completion requirements like this? And was it really necessary to take back so much of the freedom given to us in 64? Look, Super Mario 64 has a ton of problems, but its greatest strength is in its sense of freedom, its open-endedness, the fact that you can skip whatever 50 stars you want and still reach the end and get to Rainbow Ride in both water levels. Sunshine takes this philosophy and tosses it in a wood chipper. You are going to play the way Nintendo wanted you to play, damn it. Enjoy dealing with this casino for 10 hours. And even if the 50 mandatory shines in the game were all absolute bangers, which they are not, this still makes for an experience that is just lacking in a major way, a great game that suffers from requiring a much more rigid experience than its own predecessor provided on inferior hardware. And then there's the repetition that kicks in, including with the base game. Having to fight Gooper Blooper and Race Il Pontissimo 3 times each, all the red coin challenges, having to fight this polluted piranha plant 5 times, having to chase Shadow Mario 11 fucking times! I get that this game was rushed, but there's absolutely no excuse for any of this. Sure, I might be having fun while completing these tasks, and let me be clear, I am always having fun while playing this game, but that doesn't make the tasks any less monotonous from a gameplay perspective, any less lazy on the part of the developers. Also, this has nothing to do with anything, but why doesn't Shadow Mario just take off his costume and run around as Bowser Jr. once he reveals his identity? I get that it was just a way to reuse Mario's character model, but that always really disappointed me as a kid, and it disappoints me now as well, because I have my priorities straight, damn it! Anyway, while I might still have more fun with this game than any other Mario title, that just isn't enough in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't excuse so many half-assed design choices, a story that amounts to nothing, a progression system that's a step backwards from its own predecessor, and at times a completely broken mess of an experience. To be fair, I firmly believe that a lot of the game's broken qualities and rough physics engine make it more fun. None of it breaks the game or anything, at least in my experience, but that doesn't excuse it from being this way in the first place, which leads me to my final point. Chapter 5, a broken mess even today, and wow, I'm doing great with these segues, huh? Let's just get this out of the way. There is no 3D Mario game that needs more TLC than Mario Sunshine, which is funny because in most ways I feel that it's aged much better than 64. It features a more competent camera, level design that better suits Mario's moveset, and it still looks quite beautiful in my opinion. Some textures are flat and character models are a bit rough, but this game has aged gracefully thanks to its bright and appealing visual design, and with a little polishing up, it could definitely rival the look of most modern releases. And yet, for all of Mario 64's problems, at least that game isn't broken? Mario Sunshine is actually broken, and again, I think that adds to the charm in some ways. I enjoy the exploits like the rocket nozzle storage and walking into all the walls and whatnot, but it's a broken game. You shouldn't be able to skip through entire challenges so easily or literally walk underwater like some sort of amphibian Jesus. It's unbelievable to me that they ever released the game in this state. And what's even more unbelievable to me is that they re-released the game in this state. Jesus, I really cannot believe they didn't bother patching any of this out, fixing the physics of the pachinko machine, the physics in general, improving hitboxes and collision detection. It has been 19 years and this Pianta still doesn't have a dick. Are you kidding me? The 3D All-Stars collection was a lazy excuse to re-release legacy content for full price. We all know that, and this game is proof. I still love Mario Sunshine just as I still love Mario 64, but Sunshine is even more personal to me than that first title was. It was and still is one of my absolute favorite games. Nothing will ever change my mind on that, and I will never stop being bad or wrong for feeling this way. But playing this game today, I can't help but think to myself, really? Was Nintendo really okay with this? I mean, they obviously were, but really? Super Mario Sunshine, in my humble opinion, is still the most pure, unadulterated fun you can get out of this collection, even if it's not the best or most technically polished out of the three. Oh, God, no. And Super Mario Sunshine, in my humble opinion, really could have been a masterpiece. The base game is strong, the movement is well defined, the levels are interesting and distinct while fully committing to a beautiful tropical theme, the music is sublime, there's real actual platforming challenge, and most shines feel rewarding to grab. But then there's just so much other garbage, so many careless decisions and baffling design choices that bog down the overall experience, and we got no improvements to any of that in the Switch version. But because I'm an inconsistent hypocrite, I love it anyway. I love this rushed piece of shit of a game, and I recommend it to anybody who can handle some jank in their 3D platformers, because it's just pure fun. But unfortunately, I just don't think that's enough. And next time on the DieAntDie Power Hour, we will talk about Super Mario Galaxy, which is very good. Bye. Hey DieAnt Nation, so Super Mario Galaxy is very good. Bye. Whoa, 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 hold on, I'm not done yet. Super Mario Galaxy is... Super Mario Galaxy, much like Mario 64, needs no introduction. Not only is it one of the greatest video games of all time, but you can argue that it's the greatest Mario game, even the single greatest platformer ever made. I mean, I'm not making that argument, I'm a Mario Sunshine guy, so my opinion is garbage anyway, but on a purely objective level, Mario Galaxy is truly in a league of its own. It's so good that I have a hard time even talking about it. It's very good, what else is there to say? Honestly, anything else just feels redundant in a way. But they're putting Mario down this month, so I'm still gonna try. With all that being said, here are my thoughts on Super Mario Galaxy. Very good game. Let's go back a bit.
Oh, thank God.
Super Mario Galaxy released in November 2007 worldwide, with the 12th being the lucky day for us here in the States.
See, November feels like the right time to put out a Mario game. Like, can you imagine if it came out in August? That would have been absurd!
The concept of Mario woohooing all around planets was a natural result of ideas introduced in the Super Mario 128 tech demo. That demo included the mechanic of walking around spherical objects, so the developers decided to copy off of their old work, making for the first time that Mario would visit space if you don't count Super Mario Land 2 and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door and Mario Kart Super Circuit and Mario's Time Machine. And after a bit of hesitation with the idea of platforming in space, the developers quickly figured out how to execute the concept, and they enjoyed the creative freedom that the new setting provided them. Because the thought of a Bee Mario in the Mushroom Kingdom? Bullshit, preposterous, that would only make sense in the Bee Galaxies! Nintendo knew they had something special on their hands with Galaxy. In fact, according to former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé,
while every Mario game is a classic, in one sense, this is the first worthy successor to Super Mario 64.
Funny enough, as Nintendo later acknowledged during the run-up to Super Mario Odyssey, the Galaxy games aren't really direct sequels to 64 and Sunshine. Instead, they exist in their own little 2D-3D hybrid haberdashery, much like Super Mario 3D World. These games are much more focused on linear level design than freeform exploration, so in a way, Reggie was always kind of wrong with that statement.
So Reggie just threw Sunshine under the bus in order to lie! Cool! Reggie!
Super Mario Galaxy released to critical and commercial success, and is still considered to be one of the greatest video games of all time.
Enough with the history lesson, when do we get to talk about me?
So, being fully honest, Galaxy kinda came at the wrong time for me growing up. I got it when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, and it was a game that I played and liked. I didn't run around its worlds endlessly or feel a connection to any of the levels or mechanics or whatever like I did with 64 and Sunshine, no, but I had a decent amount of fun just completing the actual game. I even 100%ed it as a young lad, which I can't even say about 64 or Sunshine. Only as Mario though, but I'm still saying I 100%ed it, just let me have this, okay? It counts! But I slowly found myself playing video games less and less around that time. The only modern systems I owned were a Wii and a DS Lite, and perhaps as a consequence of that, I felt myself morphing into the dreaded casual gamer that Nintendo was targeting during that era, mainly using both systems for games like Wii Sports and Mario Kart.
Sorry!
Maybe because of all of these factors, or maybe because Mario Galaxy isn't a big open sandbox of a game that I could just jump back into again and again like its predecessors, it didn't leave much of an impression on me. And because of that, over the last decade I've developed a dumb belief that I was never a fan of this game at all, since whenever it came up in conversation my only thought was, yup, I played that and can't remember a single thing about it, except the Bowser fights, those were really good. So when Nintendo announced the 3D All-Stars collection, it wasn't exactly the most exciting moment of the trailer for me. But then I got the game, and after playing some Mario 64, and then spending a few days playing through Sunshine, finally I got to Galaxy, 100%ed it again, and enjoyed every single moment of it. Well, again, only as Mario.
It counts.
As I said, Super Mario Galaxy, to me, is just a very good game, and I still find myself struggling to say much more than that. It features very good levels, very good missions and mechanics and ideas, very good controls, a very good camera, all things considered.
You get the point.
Weirdly enough, an aspect of this game that I can easily talk about are the bosses, especially the Bowser fights. That's right, I'm starting off by talking about boss fights, you can't stop me. These Bowser fights, to me, are easily the best in the series. Mechanically, they're fairly straightforward, but their scope and presentation elevate them beyond anything else we've ever seen in a Mario game. It also doesn't hurt that these fights have some real stakes attached to them. In this game's very good story, Bowser isn't just kidnapping Peach because he's trying to marry her or acting like she's Junior's mom or whatever, no. For some reason, he actually wants to take over the universe, not just the Mushroom Kingdom, but like, everything? Why? What happened after Mario destroyed your bathtub, my man? Did you run into debt? Where was I? Oh, yeah, Bowser boss fights and the platforming sections leading up to them that are very reminiscent of Mario 64's. They're so memorable, exciting, so very good. And then the non-Bowser boss fights? Oh my god, they're also very good. They're all uniquely designed and feature interesting gameplay mechanics. A few of them have a real sense of scale that I really like, and some of them can be surprisingly challenging, you know, as far as Mario games are concerned. As I said, they're very good. And you know one thing about this game that's even better than very good? the fully orchestrated soundtrack, which is by far one of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time. These tracks are incredible, and they range from being quaint and low-key to intense and bombastic, but each perfectly accompanies the level or challenge they're paired with, and they're all insanely catchy to boot. I really don't think there's a single bad song in the whole game, not one that feels even remotely dull or unnecessary, which is pretty remarkable. I think it's fair to say that the music is Galaxy's single greatest quality, and that's truly saying something. Plus, thanks to the game's large level count, we get many more tracks to drown in than previous Mario titles. Compared to Mario 64's 15 levels and Sunshine's whopping 7, Galaxy features 42 smaller, more streamlined galaxies, each possessing between 1 and 7 power stars. In addition, this game features the Comet Observatory hub world, which... honestly, this place is just pathetic. Besides a few hidden one-ups and the neat way that it gradually lights up as you unlock new sections of it, there is absolutely nothing to see here, and I would have preferred there being no hub at all as opposed to this sad husk. That is all I have to say about the observatory, and I will never speak of it again. But back to the levels, I won't bother going through them one by one like I did with 64 and Sunshine, because you'll be hearing the words "very good" so many times in a row that you'll probably just click out of the video. Except for Dusty Dune Galaxy. I don't know, maybe it's just my desert prejudice talking here, but I'm also not big into some of the mechanics in this galaxy either. Not a bad level at all, but just, you know, not as very good as the others. I'm truly sorry, Dusty Dune Galaxy fans. But in terms of the levels as a whole, while some galaxies do feature a bit of breathing room akin to the previous two games' more open worlds, there is a whole lot of linearity in this outing. The objective for nabbing each star is pretty much always going to be some form of platform from one end of the stage to the other, while engaging with unique mechanics that are often gravity-based. Good job. Well, as a kid, I think I preferred the bigger galaxies for their very faint sense of open exploration. As a less kid-age Anthony today, I've grown a fondness for the galaxies that are as tight and direct as humanly possible. I really appreciate the game's refined to the bone stage design and pure focus on platforming, and it's where things truly excel here. It's also where Mario's more limited movement makes the most sense. In terms of new moves, in addition to the gimped return of 64's long jump, backflip, and crawling, especially crawling, I like when he crawled like a big old baby, not whatever the f this is. The new entree on the proverbial platter is the Galaxy Spin, a move that is so helpful and satisfying to use that I can't believe this is the first Mario game it's ever been in. It gives you just a little bit of wiggle room while platforming, and it's useful for all sorts of other situations, such as combat. It's the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think about this game now, and also, why in the frickin' heck is it not a part of Mario's Smash moveset yet? But while Mario's movement options are fine, actually moving around is a bit less so. It's simply not very fun or satisfying to run around aimlessly here like it was in 64 and Sunshine. It feels like any forward momentum you build up is constantly being taken away from you, which works well for the linear stages but creates a bit of a disconnect for me when you're expected to trek around the wider areas like Honey Hive Galaxy. It's not horrible, in fact it's not even bad, but it does feel like a bit of a downgrade unfortunately. And speaking of unfortunately's, the power-ups! Man, these power-ups... So a lot of people complain about Yoshi's implementation in Mario Sunshine because rather than functioning as a fun addition to your regular movement like in the 2D games, using him limits what you can do as base Mario and ends up feeling unnecessary as a result. While I do agree that Yoshi isn't implemented well in that game, I still think that he's fun to use because controlling him can get pretty chaotic and nutty in its own special way. But Galaxy's power-ups to me are just an even worse version of what people don't like about Sunshine Yoshi. The fun or useful ones like the Fire Flower and Flying are locked to a strict timer and feel like they're never actually used for anything. Seriously, how did a Mario game up the Fire Flower? And the less fun ones like Bee and Boo Mario severely limit the base controls when you use them. Like, why the hell can't you long jump as Bee Mario, and why is Boo Mario so slow? I mean, are the costumes cute?
Oh my god, yes!
But does that make them worth it when they hinder the actual gameplay to this extent?
A little bit.
So overall, I don't love how Mario feels in and of itself, but despite all of that, he somehow still manages to control absolutely perfectly when you're actually playing the game. Like, Galaxy Mario obviously wouldn't work in Sunshine, sure, but at the same time, Sunshine Mario would feel completely wrong in this game as well, even without my best friend Flood wrecking the house. Galaxy has a lot of tight sections and challenges that are truly weird with their gravity that still feel novel even today, so the game did have to take back some player control in order to make these sections a little more manageable to work through, especially for the wider audience that Nintendo was targeting with this outing. It's admirable how they managed to create a more scaled back moveset that still functions as well as it does, because when I actually play the game, none of my complaints really matter, it all just works flawlessly. But in addition to regular movement, Galaxy features a few motion-based hijinks as well. Thankfully there aren't a ton of them in the game, or else I think they'd end up feeling pretty stinky, but here are my brief thoughts on each of them regardless. I don't care for any pointer-based movement like the bubble and pull star nonsense. It all bores me and slows down the pace, but it's not a hate crime or anything. The mana ray's fine, and oh my fucking god, the star ball! Look, I know I'm in the minority here, but controlling this stupid ball is the closest that the game gets to feeling like Mario Sunshine in terms of absolutely stressful bullshit that I love to death. It is so much dumb fun, and I swear to you now I'll find an excuse to make a 20-minute video just about the ball one day. But with all due respect to my big beautiful ball, Mario Galaxy is a game that's truly at its best when it's prioritizing exceptional level design above all else. You'll be jumping between planetoids, walking on walls and ceilings, floating through the air, and so much more, and I can't emphasize how absolutely painfully very good it all is. None of these levels are a chore to get through, there are no bad ideas, and they all stick around just long enough to feel satisfying without wearing themselves out. The main exception to this, you know, besides Dusty Doom Galaxy, sorry, are the prankster comets, aka the repetition comets. They're all just lazy ways to recycle content, such as having to beat a boss without getting bonked, or having to race a slow Cosmic Mario Il Pontissimo style. But despite these being repetitive, they aren't bad at all, and I do have enough fun completing them, with one major exception being the purple comets. The purple comets, for those out of the loop, are basically just remix versions of the 100 coin stars from 64 and Sunshine. However, these purple comets come in two unique varieties. Some where you have a time limit to collect 100 purple coins out of a total of 150 or so, which are actually a lot of fun, and some where you have to collect exactly 100 purple coins out of a total of exactly 100 purple coins, and these can go right off. It's absolutely disgusting that these exist, especially considering the fact that, like I said, I don't enjoy running around as Mario just for the sake of it, which these levels inherently require that you do. These challenges are especially lazy, and the developers were kind enough to hide some individual coins in some truly jank places, meaning that you can find 99 of them and then have to spend 5 minutes of your dumb Anthony life combing for the last one. I would argue that these are the most frustrating part of the entire game, and they rival any of the repetitive garbage 64 and Sunshine threw at us, but to be honest, if this is the absolute worst that the game has to offer, then it's obviously a very good game, you know what I mean? Because that's the thing about Galaxy. When I talked about Super Mario 64, I called it a masterpiece of its time that hasn't aged as gracefully as I wish it did. And when I talked about Super Mario Sunshine, I said that that could have been a masterpiece, but its rushed development and broken elements hold it back from being truly great. Well, Super Mario Galaxy is a true masterpiece to the surprise of nobody who's ever played it. It's so painfully good that that's really all somebody like me can say about it. Because I do agree that Galaxy is very good, obviously. It's easily and indisputably the best game in the 3D All-Stars collection, even if it's not my favorite game out of the bunch. It's the most polished, the most beautiful, and the most well-done game of the three, and it continues to age like fine wine both technically and visually. Seriously, playing this game in widescreen feels like it could have come out within the last year. It's pure eye candy from start to finish. But that's why I have less to say about it than the previous two games. It's just so overwhelmingly good in every single way. Such a masterpiece, but at the same time, my mind goes blank whenever I try to think any deeper about it. I don't have as much of a personal connection with this game, less moments of it stand out in my mind, and despite how great it is, it still doesn't leave as much of an impression on me as games like 64 and Sunshine did. I totally recognize that nostalgia has a lot to do with this, but I've played tons of games outside of my childhood that have more than lodged their way into my brain. Games like Undertale, Hollow Knight, and Breath of the Wild are not only masterpieces that I played as a non-kid adult, but they're games that I could easily write 100-page dissertations about, you know, for money. But Mario Galaxy, it's just not that for me, but I think that's okay. It's a very good game that I recognize as very good, and there's nothing wrong with that, I think. It's an absolute masterpiece, and that's just about all I have to say about it. Oh well, maybe I'll have more thoughts about Super Mario Galaxy 2. Let me just pop in 3D All-Stars and... Welcome to the final section of this video, where I complain just a bit more about the garbage 3D All-Stars collection, starting with the fact that it's only available until Okay, first of all, pulling back the curtain for a second, I work on these videos months in advance, so I have no idea if Nintendo is going to end up changing their mind about this, but as of now, the concept of selling a video game for a very limited time, especially digitally, is so bizarrely, brazenly f***ed up that I really can't wrap my head around it. Actually, no, screw what I said about them changing their mind, because even if they do decide to keep selling this game, screw Nintendo forever using this manipulative Disney Vault bull to boost sales of 3 of their most beloved games. The 3D collection would have sold like hotcakes whether it was a limited release or not, but I guess that just wasn't enough for them, was it?
But hey now,
Some people actually say with their mouths,
6 months is plenty of time to buy a video game, and if people don't buy it now, they can just grab a copy off eBay later. What's the big deal?
the big deal is that it's it's gross and disappointing and such an anti-consumer decision for them to make, and it cuts into the concept of celebrating Mario's anniversary at all. Look, I know a thing or two about capitalism, okay? Nintendo is a business focused on making money. They're not our friend, they can do whatever the hell they want, but that doesn't mean they should. They're alienating their core audience and enabling scalpers just to make a few extra bucks. It's disrespectful not only to their fans, but to their legacy content as well, and I'm sorry, but Mario just deserves better than this. But what makes it so much worse is the absolutely abysmal quality of the collection in itself. I can live with the bare bones menu and lack of extra features, though it's disappointing that they couldn't even add in some concept art or developer interviews or a pause button for the soundtracks. But the celebration of Mario's 35th anniversary just feels like a moist piece of cake with a burnt candle sticking out of it. Sure, moist cake is still cake and it might even taste good, but is it wrong for us to want cake that isn't wet? Nintendo could have gone in and only fine-tuned Mario 64's camera and made it widescreen, and I would have been happy, despite all of its other problems. They could have added some quality of life upgrades to Sunshine, like a map for the blue coins and the ability to skip cutscenes, and I still would have been happy, even if it was still a broken mess. And for Galaxy, they could have... well, Galaxy still holds up really well. I don't really have any complaints about that one. But instead, they upgraded some of the menu icons and graphics, use the version of Mario 64 without the backwards long jump. That'll be $60, please.
But they added GameCube controller support for Sunshine. That bumps things up to at least a B+.
It's just so disappointing. And look, as I've been talking about these games this past month, there's one thing I've chosen not to bring up because I wanted to focus on what Nintendo actually chose to release. But let me quickly talk about my thoughts on the mods and fan ports of these games. I am a fan of the mods and fan ports of these games, even if I don't really play them myself, and they make Nintendo look like a bunch of chumps. The community has been out here making improvements to these games for years. These include amazing PC mods for 64 that, in addition to looking so damn good, are also in widescreen, or making Sunshine 60 FPS, or running Galaxy in 4K. What? These are passion projects that regular people are doing in their spare time for no money, while Nintendo spends real time and effort shutting them down and failing to even shove Super Mario Galaxy 2 onto a Switch cartridge. And yeah, I know that apparently Galaxy 2 features a lot of pointer-heavy stuff with Yoshi that might not work well on the Switch. I've never played that game, so I admit that I don't fully understand the issue, but could compromises really not be made? I don't know, I personally believe that Galaxy 2 isn't in this collection because Nintendo just didn't want to, not because they couldn't figure it out. Call me crazy, but I don't think Nintendo was trying to give us more than the bare minimum here, so sorry I have a hard time buying that excuse, but I've given up on giving them the benefit of the doubt from a business perspective a long time ago. I know I'm not the first person to say any of this stuff, and honestly, I'm an absolute hypocrite anyway. I'm still so glad that I can play these games portably while cooking rice or whatever, especially Sunshine. I happily bought the 3D collection the day it came out, the second Walmart opened in fact, and I mean it when I say that there was a line of over 20 of us all waiting to buy this single game. I didn't even mind them selling it for full price despite the collection probably being worth $40 tops. I was just so happy to have these games on Switch, because these are great f***ing games! And when I talked about 64 and Sunshine especially, I felt myself focusing on their negatives much more than I anticipated. But let me be clear, these are incredible, essential platforming experiences that I truly love, and my negative tone honestly stems from this shockingly lazy and almost offensive re-release. But besides me just wanting to complain, how does all of this tie into Galaxy? Well, on the surface it might look like it doesn't. Galaxy is easily the game in this collection that holds up the best. I mean, if you want to split hairs, the camera could be a little bit better, I guess, and handheld controls are a bit awkward, but they're manageable enough. Also, quick aside, but I wish you didn't unlock Rosalina's story so slowly. It cuts into some of her narrative's emotional impact when it's being drip-fed to you in mini-sized chunks, but I suppose I could have been smarter and just waited until I unlocked it all before reading it, but no, I'm not just being resentful here, it's Nintendo who's wrong. But anyway, while my issues with the collection might not seem as relevant to Galaxy, in my opinion, when an absolute masterpiece is included in a collection as pathetic as this one, it devalues the legacy of that game as well. This goes for 64 and Sunshine too, obviously, but it's especially noticeable here. It gives the impression that these games aren't worth the extra time and effort, that they're consumer products that'll sell anyway, so who really cares? But that sucks, right? Like, treating such important games and also Sunshine like this, it just blows, you know? It's sad that Nintendo just doesn't care as much as we do, and it's disappointing that they'd prioritize profits this much when it comes to some of their most monumental titles. It legitimately makes me sad to see the fan community pouring their hearts into such incredible mods of these games, only to watch Nintendo erase all of their efforts like it's nothing. And at the end of the day, it's just hard to celebrate such beloved pieces of art when Nintendo treats the event like business as usual, available for a limited time, so you better just shut up and pay! And I think that's where I'm gonna wrap this up. Look, Super Mario Galaxy is very good, and a game as very good as this one deserves so much better than being featured in a collection as very bad as Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I truly hope that Nintendo prioritizes quality over profits for Mario's Big 5-0, but if we're lucky, we'll all be dead by then, so they won't even get the chance to screw it up. See you next time, DieAnt Squad, and thanks so much for watching.
Oh, Jesus Christ, you're still here? Interesting fun fact, I didn't cut my hair while I worked on these videos because I wanted to see how much it would grow in 6 weeks, so... Bye!